Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Tom.
And my name is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us and our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com.
Gentlemen, I went to have a nap earlier in the week and slept for a couple of days, and I woke up and everything has changed.
Oh no.
Absolutely everything.
It's all different.
Boy, have I got some news for you, Adam.
Remember a week ago, which was 10 years?
So long ago.
Yeah.
We are now allowed out of the house. I went and saw Tom in the park.
Oh,
What's
yeah.
going on
Yeah, I
there?
guess like getting this context out of the way, I suppose, straight up, restrictions have eased a little bit for us here in Victoria. So
Define a little bit, though.
two households can gather as long as there's not more than 5 people. So, yes,
Two
it's nice.
households squared, depending on who you ask.
Depending who you ask. Oh, yes. Yeah, some people are skirting those rules a little bit. Friday night, I went for a walk around the park near my house, which was a very warm Friday night. It was like the first sort of warm night that we've had for, since winter allegedly ended. It's Melbourne. Yep. Winter lasts forever.
Winter is coming and has stayed for some time.
There were groups that I think interpreted the rules to mean 5 people per household could gather, because there was a clear, maybe they weren't the same group. Maybe I'm judging a little bit. But there was a group that they were maybe a meter apart, so they could have been from the same picnic camp. But
they're not meeting together, Tom. They just happen to be in the same area.
That's true, but one group was a bunch of middle-aged women drinking wines, and the other group was a bunch of middle-aged men drinking beers. Now, I think it's the husband and wives separate catch-up.
Certainly not.
No, am I crazy? Did I profile them too hard?
No, that's obviously what's happening there. That's clearly what's going on.
But yes, it was very nice. I saw Adam and his partner Elle for the first time in person, I think, since February.
I forgot what you looked like. I was like, it's that guy I used to
see another person's face, in those brief instances where you could remove the mask to sip a beer and then put it back on, to see the lower half of someone else I know's face. It was very nice. I needed that today, Adam. Thanks.
You're always into what they cover up. All of a sudden the lower half of someone's mouth is going to be a really, really sexually enticing prospect from now. Just be show me that chin.
What you can't have.
Exactly right. I wish I had curly, blonde, luscious locks. You want what you don't have. That's always the way.
Yeah, that's true.
It was great to see you too, Tom. And it was great to see that the people of St Kilda took this message very well, and obviously implemented the restrictions and their behaviour towards them to the letter.
Mm-hmm.
And there were no problems.
Absolutely none.
That's how I describe it.
That's how I describe it. Although the funny thing is, I'm going to get really angry about this topic. I'm just warning you guys straight up. The funny thing is, we won't know how bad these problems are for 2 or 3 weeks.
What problems, Tom? Tell me about the problems.
I don't know what they'll be yet, Adam, because it hasn't been 2-3 weeks. That's the fucking nature of what we're doing. Okay. Rewind. So, as I mentioned just before, we had our first kind of quite sunny, warm weekend in a long time. So people are basically every Melburnian, I think, was day drinking yesterday.
I was definitely drunk.
Everyone was in a park drinking because, of course. But while most people, from what I've seen, were doing that in their nice little smaller groups and relatively social distanced and all those sorts of things, it was reported on the news that hundreds, if not thousands of people gathered on St Kilda Beach. No masks, no distancing, pissed as newts, having a good old time and endangering us all. And it was great.
Great. That's what you want. That's what you want to see.
It came to light because the Channel 7 News' coverage of the event has kind of been the viral one, where
by the way,
a reporter from 7 News was just standing on the beach doing his whole piece to camera of hundreds of people here, and behind him there's just shirtless or people in swimmers, people just run around being like, "What? "Oh, they're getting in!" A woman runs up and kisses the camera lens. Like other
There's a
people,
lot of residue on the camera for several seconds.
other people just like grabbed the journo who was masked up, but they weren't like kissing him on the cheek and being like, "Whoa, fuck yeah, no for the boys," and all that kind of crap.
Would you like to see said clip?
Oh, you're gonna play it?
Said
All right.
Let us watch it.
All right, I'll try not to burst a blood vessel.
Yeah, well, I think it's instructive because it gives you just an audio understanding, if nothing else, of the fucking chicanery that was going on.
I look at Channel 7 stuff and I go, you're really trying to crank out a sausage from the whatever small animal you've just put into the meat grinder.
Oh,
it's a really bad analogy, but anyway,
that's perfect.
Legitimate.
That part of it. I know people are feeling for the journo in this instance, but I don't after what I saw last night. So,
no, I saw your tweet about this, Tom. But yes.
But play the clip.
Roll the clip, Jimmy.
Mike, how good is this shot of warm weather? And here it's in Kilda. They are gathering in the hundreds. Remember, though, you can't come across town to enjoy time at the beach with your friends. The rules are still in place. You should still wear a mask. You should stay just 5 kilometres from home. And you should only be in groups of no more than 5 people from 2 households. The people here, they're in their hundreds. And this is just an idea of what Melbourne might expect over the weekend as it warms up even more.
It makes me so angry.
If I was a journo, I'd just be like, where's the decon shower? Where do I go to rip off the clothes, burn them?
They don't make water hot enough, Adam.
I don't know where to start with this because I suppose
How about... Hey, could you fucking cretins not? Could you please? Could you just not? I know that you hate Dan Andrews, everything sharks, and fuck you, Dan, and you're throwing fingers, I'm such a fucking rebel. But could you, for a second, not be a selfish cunt and just keep on with the fucking restrictions for 3 more weeks? Could you just fucking not?
People are frustrated, people are bored, people are tired, and all that sort of stuff. And I get it, but we are so close. They've kind of given, this is the first time in ages that we've kind of had an idea of what maybe the finish line is. And we're so fucking close, and they couldn't keep a lid on it. And just to think, not only our friend of the show, Susie, brought this up to us because she lives in the area, that if this probably most of these people weren't coming within their own 5Ks.
No.
So if they turn St Kilda into a hotspot, they don't have to fucking live with it. Whilst the rest of us I live not too far from there, that the rest of us will have to fucking live in it. And if they extend the lockdown by, I was saying this to Adam earlier today because I have family who live, this is my selfish reasons for being mad about this. I have family that live in the ACT.
You guys talk without me?
Yeah,
I guess.
It's hurtful.
In secret.
When we're in the park during a pandemic, when we're allowed to see each other. Very rare circumstances, but that's when we talk without you.
I was like, should we invite George? No, he's outside 5K.
He's outside 5K, and also that's 3 households.
Convenient.
So it breaks, 2 rules.
Fucking convenient. Well, I could be meeting with Adam and his household, and Adam could be meeting with you, and you could be meeting with me, and it's only 2 households. I'm pretty sure that's how it works.
I've got Brett Sutton on speed dial. I'll run it by him. Anyway, my family live in the ACT, and we do alternating Christmases and stuff with my family and my partner's family here in Melbourne. So this year was meant to be a year to go back up to Canberra because last Christmas I didn't, and I haven't seen my family since January because that was the last time they were allowed to come in, right? So Christmas is something that I was hoping would be the next time that I would get to see them, and it was maybe looking like it's possible. I know that the border restrictions aren't exactly up to Victoria. It's up to there's a lot of different bureaucratic shit that we got to get through, right? But it was looking like a solid maybe. But I know if they extend the lockdown from any kind of spikes that result from something like this, it's done. It's off the table. So the selfish reasons I have here is these fuckheads have stopped me being able... I've missed nearly a year of my nephews growing up. I haven't seen my mum in so long, and I know I'm just going to cry when I see her again for the first time because it's killing me. And that's just like, I'm not even like suffering in a big like livelihoodness from all this. So what about all these businesses in St Kilda alone that can't be open? Also, you cunts can have a fucking like piss up. And not only that, do they think we don't want to be doing that?
I absolutely want to be getting fucking drunk with my mates in the park. Like
if on Friday, you guys were all like, let's fucking go to the beach and get trashed, I'd be so on board. We all want to be doing it. Those of us who are saying like fucking that we like we're okay with the lockdown and like hashtag stand by Dan Andrews and whatever. That's not us like fucking jacking it to authority. We're all like, oh, we just love being oppressed and I love my home so fucking much and all that sort of shit. No, I want to be getting trashed with my mates at a festival or a fucking good beer week or whatever, and you fuckheads are ruining it.
I do love the people that are like, oh, what? So you like wearing a mask, do you? You like the restrictions? It's like, no, I don't like it, but I understand that it's necessary because I'm a fucking adult. Like, I don't want to needlessly cause the deaths of thousands of people and also crash the economy because I'm an adult. So I will I will do my homework, as Tom's t-shirt would suggest. I will eat my fucking vegetables. I'll eat my Brussels sprouts. I'll wear my fucking mask and I'll pay my taxes. Not because I want to, because that's what you have to do when you're a fucking adult.
Yeah, and you can see the benefit that it gives to someone who's not yourself. Because I hadn't even brought up the deaths that could happen yet. Like, if more people die, like, we're doing all this. Like, it's interesting. I want to, like, if and when this is, I'm getting off on tangents really quickly. I'm sorry.
I love it. I love Angry Tom.
If and when this pandemic, like, eases off and things go back to normal, this has to be shown as an exercise when we were all expected to actually put our money where our mouths were when we talked about, like, you know, doing things for the good of others, like our charitability. And everyone, I think, needs to remember how hard we fucking failed.
There is a whole argument, you know, by the people that I think the Liberal Democrats are quite across this, where it's like, rather than there being restrictions, the concept should be that the responsibility is on the individual and trust the individual to make the right decisions.
Okay, in this libertarian wet dream, have they heard of Tragedy of the Commons? Because that's everyone looking out for their individual shit leads to everything being fucked for everyone. And nothing like makes this, nothing is a more perfect exemplar of that than the current situation with the pandemic. Ryan, a friend of the show, Ryan, is writing in. My dad lives in Laylaw. I haven't seen him since February/early March. We are so close, yet we cannot see each other. My son just wants to see his grandpa. These people make me furious. And and that's what Dan Andrews came out and said, is this is making a mockery of the sacrifice that so many other Victorians have made up until this point to get us to the stage where we're only recording 10, 15 coronavirus cases a day. Like, why on the last leg of this are you people so keen to just engage in a circular fucking firing squad? Like, I literally, the psychology of this is just absolutely cunting baffling to me. Like, we're so close.
I do want to probably give some insight into that, in the sense that I don't necessarily think there were 2,000 people that all got on a Facebook group and went down there together. I think you've got to remember that St Kilda, particularly that foreshore area, is very popular. And whether or not people
thousands of people, those thousands of people, not all of them were from 5 kilometers of within St Kilda. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Adam. I understand that you want to see the best in people, and it's just individual people all doing their own thing, and they all happen to be gathering in a popular place. But once you turn up and you see that there's fucking thousands of people, you go, you know, we might go a little bit further down. We might go down to Brighton. We'll go down to Edith Vale, where it's a little bit less crowded, rather than getting on a piss up in front of the cameras. Like, they were deliberately there for the party that was happening in St Kilda. It wasn't just a case of like, oh, we're just me and the kids going down to the beach. It was an absolute fuckfest party bus. That's what was happening.
Because, I mean, to be fair, I guess that's the question of, when you see a situation like that, is the encumbrance upon the individual to go, no, that's unsafe, I should go somewhere else? Or do you go, well, again, it's the whole thing of, is there a collective responsibility where everyone should be thinking about that? Or is it like, well, I'm looking after myself. I'll do the best I can in the situation over here. And then whatever happens around me happens around me. Like, certainly, I also saw my brother and sister who lived together yesterday at Caulfield Park. And there were a lot of people in the park, but because it's big enough, you can spread out. But of course, if that park theoretically was smaller, would we all be sitting there as comfortably as we were? So I think part of it is that St Kilda is such a hotspot for this kind of thing, and there are a lot of backpackers in there that are separated from their families and that came to Australia for a party and have been trapped here, so to speak, since March, that there is a desire to have an outlet and people are wanting to do that. But
I understand.
Yeah, I get it.
That's what I mean. Like, we're tired. I'm tired too. Like, we're all exhausted and drained. Like, we were talking, Adam, today about, like, why am I so tired? I'm not doing anything. And it's because there is a crushing mental and emotional weight to all this. And we haven't even got it the hardest. So I get why people are, like, strung out and like that it's an appealing prospect, but it's like, come on.
But it's not an excuse. This is the thing. I get it. I understand why, but it is not an excuse to flout the regulations. Just because it's warm outside doesn't mean coronavirus has just gone away. I've noticed the last 3 days, mask wearing seems to have become fucking optional. There's just like, oh, well, but it's hot. So, but it's like, yeah, coronavirus doesn't give a shit if it's hot or not. These are still, you still need to wear a mask. It's not an optional thing anymore. Before, you'd see someone walking down the street without a mask and they'd at least make like a shamefaced attempt to like bring their scarf up over their mouth and be like, oh yeah, this is what I was doing the whole time. Now I see it's like 50% of people just walking around, no fucking mask whatsoever. It's just like, I can't believe when the history of this is written, it'll be like, oh yeah, and the pandemic of 2020 finally stopped being dealt with when we, checks notes, got bored of it.
Yeah.
As I was saying to Tom earlier in the park today, I looking at the death tolls in Europe, they're much lower than the first wave. The case numbers are much higher. The death tolls thus far are much lower. So let's assume that they stay that way, that they could quite easily go back up because of various reasons, which we've spent a whole podcast about. But assuming that death rate stays low, what you're going to find is if there's a third wave in Australia, I think you're going to find, and this is my major fear, is that that the response is going to be not like the first and second wave. There's going to be a case of where the ethical pendulum is going to go to the majority's quality of life to the vulnerable's lives. And it's going to go towards the quality of life spectrum.
I agree. I don't see, if we start getting to the case where we're looking at hundreds of cases a day again, which, like, if everyone just fucking ignores the restrictions, that's exactly what's going to happen. I don't see people putting up with the third wave of this. It'll just be a case of like, well, we are just, I need to go down to the pub because it's hot and I am just willing to tolerate a certain background level number of thousands of deaths. To me, that is
what they want.
Yeah, there is a complete moral and ethical failing that we have had as a society, that we are getting to that point where it's like, oh, I want to go to the movies so fucking grandma can go fuck herself. Like, that is a 21st century level of selfishness that I don't think, the greatest generation wasn't, when they were talking about, turning their lights out during, bombing raids in Europe and sacrificing immensely and, buying war bonds and doing all these sorts of things for the common good. To see them seeing us now, I think would shame us. Like, the complete lack of any kind of empathy for other people is absolutely astounding.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I think people have empathy, but it's the 6 degrees of separation where it's not on your doorstep. And I think that's the thing, is that you are only, and large portions of the US have had this effect as well, where it's not until you personally are affected by it that you grasp the enormity of the situation. Numbers become meaningless. Personal experience is something that is much more, your brain translates that a lot more easily.
We passed, in the last week or two, we passed 1 million deaths from coronavirus, which I remember the New York Times was talking about it. Within the 10 months that it's been active is more than malaria, cholera, and something else combined. Like, it is very quickly become one of the deadliest things on the planet in the space of less than a year, in less than 1 year. So, like, you can't underestimate, and just because the numbers keep piling up, there's that quote from Stalin where it's like, one man's death is a tragedy, a million deaths is a statistic. And that is literally how people are starting to look at it. It's like, oh, well, there's 210,000 deaths in the States, whatever. Like, it'll get to 300,000 before all of this is done. But it's not me, so fuck them, I guess.
And that's, look, I mean, you could also argue this. That's been human history. Like, plagues have come and gone. You know, millions of people have died from various things, whether it be genocide, plagues, or other stuff. But it becomes...
Do you think in the Black Plague they were visiting grandma and going, well, if she dies, she fucking dies? Like, I don't know, man. It seems like
little villages probably wouldn't have had...
They didn't understand germ theory. They didn't even know what it was. They thought it was bad fucking toxic fumes in the air. You'd think, you would at least assume, with the benefit of a understanding, a knowledge of germ theory and how virus spreads and all this sort of stuff, people would at least be motivated by their own self-interest enough to be like, well, if the economy's fucked, I'm going to be fucked, so I may as well try and avoid other people dying. No, it's just like, at least they didn't know. We know better, and we're still choosing to do the wrong thing.
That was the point that I was going to bring up, is that, like, other things like this have happened in the past, but I guess the point is that it's history repeating itself, and that's where the history repeating itself is worse. Like, it's worse because we should know better.
We do know better, and we have chosen not to act on it.
Chosen not to act on that, knowing better. You're right. Before because I presume we'll want to move on to the other clusterfuck that has been this week. The last aspect of this that I want to touch on is, I mentioned the journalist before, which I think there's a media role in what happened on the weekend that I think is very, very fucked. Because a lot of people were saying, and I guess, rightly so, Adam, you mentioned the decontamination shower for the guy who's just, he's doing his job of being a news reporter.
If that was me, even normally, like at a normal festival, I'd be like, ugh.
Like that scene in X-Men when Magneto's getting deloused. Like that's the gif I would cut to if that was me.
But I've just seen people talking about it a lot, being like, hey, like, it's so fucked that, he's just there reporting on the fact that the people are there, and then they're accosting him and like exposing him to the virus, which is dangerous. But then on top of that, he tweeted out about the story yesterday, and the tweet encompassed, like, sort of rolling footage of everyone on the beach, like, camera traveling past how many people are out and about on the beach. And the tweet was just something like, people enjoying the sunshine after a long winter. How about that?
How good is that?
Like what he said in the piece we heard earlier of like, how good is this? The sunshine, da-da-da-da-da. And it's just astounding because, as a lot of people pointed out, like, that's him, like, not so much advocating for, but the angle. Like, we talked about, well, yeah, kind of. But, like, when I was doing, like, journalism training and in newsrooms and stuff like that, a big part of it, when you talk about a story of something going on, is, like, what's your angle? Like, what's the angle you're going in at? Like, why is this a story? And he was like, people were replying to him being like, this is fucked. You should be like, this behavior is not okay. Da, 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 da. And he was just saying things like, I'm leaving it up to Twitter to decide whether or not it's okay or not. I'm just reporting on what's going on. How dare I report?
I'm just asking questions. I'm just asking questions,
like,
bro.
I'm just telling you the information. How dare I?
Fuck off.
Like, how dare I just do my job and report that there are people on the beach? And it's like, but there's the angle of your story. Like, so you've got the event, but what's the take that you're going with? And this is where a lot of media bias comes into things, I know, like, the kinds of takes or like the angles that are chosen. Like, this is how the Herald Sun and the ABC can report on the same thing that have such different outcomes, right?
Sure.
But the fact that in his, like, I'm not as experienced a journalist as he is, but the fact that in his newsworthiness brain, to decide that the newsworthiness of the gathering on the beach was, people are getting out in the sunshine following a long winter, like, wow, isn't it great we're having some sun, and not thousands risk throwing all the stuff we've done in the bin and endangering lives and just fucking everything like that. Like it's even basic 101 of like, what news do people want to see? The happy-go-lucky thing or tragedy? People pick tragedy like 9 out of 10 times.
It is disturbing because like I think like that segment on Friday night and sort of talking about it in such a positive light, like how good is this goading, like as one of my friends mentioned on my Instagram feed when I posted that, it's the observer effect. So people know that they're being watched, they know they're on TV, and they're going to get like especially rowdy and acting up and kissing the guy and kissing the camera. I even wondered to the extent that that was like set up by the situation. Like
the camera crew and the reporter have made the deliberate decision to set up right in the middle of it. You could observe it from a distance.
And all those sorts of things. So a lot of those are decisions.
But the second point that I was about to make is that like to the extent that coverage on Friday night then exacerbates the amount of people doing a similar thing on Saturday in a day of similar weather, they seen that and go, well, fucking people are out doing it. Like it creates a permission structure then for people to be like, well, everyone's out and doing it, so why can't I do it? I've been wanting to go out and hang out with my mates and drink beers on the beach. Like I should be doing that as well. And so like the way you frame it, like, is important, because if you don't frame it as like these people are flouting restrictions, they are gathering together, there's still coronavirus circulating in the community, and this will cause additional infections and potentially new deaths. If that's not the take, I'm not interested in your fucking take, because it's dangerous. Like, I don't know how else, like you as a part of the media that goes out to tens, hundreds of thousands of people, have a responsibility right now, and you are not fucking living up to it by going, how good is this? You're having chip snags on a fucking baby. Like,
I think though, part of it is that one, I'm pretty sure Channel 7's owned by Murdoch. Is that correct?
I don't know, actually. I have to check on that.
7 West Media?
Anyway. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure.
I think they do, but you can fact check me on that. The other aspect, of course, is that there are a lot of people in the community that do think the restrictions are too much, and that have been. So you don't understand, like the personal opinion of the reporter may well not marry up with the broad majority.
No, of course not. Yeah. No, that makes sense and everything, but it's just the. Like, it's just that because that's what the situation is. Like, it's not a political sense to say that, like, even like look at it in the sort of the bare thing of just this is against the law. Like, it's a story that hundreds, if not thousands, are ignoring the law. Well, that's his story.
I think part of it was as well. Just remember that, again, not everyone went down there to flout the rules. I think the fact is that there are probably a couple of large groups of people that have obviously, and they you couldn't really see behind them too well. So my point being is, lots of people were there. Doesn't mean necessarily that everyone was doing the wrong thing.
No, not necessarily. But I guess like it's sort of the same thing of like you might not have gone there with the intention to breach the restrictions in such a heavy way. Like, if you're within 5Ks and only 4 of you were there and you were planning to be further.
I'm sure there were some people that were like that.
But it's the same as like if you walk into a room and like, you're keen just to be going off, I'm just going to a house party or whatever, and you arrive and everyone's doing coke and you're like, oh cool, well I guess I'll do some coke, and then the police turn up and they're like, hey, doing coke's illegal, and you're like, I didn't come here with the intention to smoke coke, I just live next door.
I'm just doing a couple of lines because everyone's doing it. Where are you taking me? Whoa, what do you mean?
Yeah, it's like, what? I arrived here first and then all these fuckheads came in and started doing my house, and they somehow shoved this coke up my nose. Anyway, Ryan has also chimed in there as well of like how other news outlets have reported on it specifically. I personally haven't seen a lot of other of the reports of sort of the same event in that context. A lot of the other reports I've seen has been, of course, everyone asked Premier Dan Andrews about it on Saturday's press conference, and he was Daddy Dandrews of like, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed, and this is unacceptable, and all that sort of stuff. But no, I haven't got an exact comparison. George, should you?
No, I don't. I only saw standard fare reporting about Dan Andrews' response and this clip which was circulating, and maybe it was circulating because it was a particularly egregious example of bad journalism, and maybe the other coverage was good. I don't know. In response to your question earlier, Adam, around Seven Network, it is owned by Seven West Media Limited, but that is a public company, so it could be possible that Rupert Murdoch has some ownership stake in that. I'm not aware. But he's certainly not the owner of it as he is with News Corp.
Yeah, cool.
So, speaking of ignoring the rules, there's been there's another gentleman overseas that doesn't like his family or his staff to wear masks.
Leaving this dumpster fire and moving to another dumpster fire overseas.
Yeah. And Schadenfreude is the word I would use to describe the situation this week, where Mr. Donald J. Trump contracted the virus. He also had, that was the end of the week. There was also a start of the week, which was basically Donald Trump's week from hell, which started off with his taxes being released by the New York Times, which aren't real. Yep. They're not real. They're not the real taxes. He's paid millions of dollars worth of taxes, despite the fact that the numbers that the newspaper reported on were just probably only a couple $100.
And also everything syncs up perfectly with other people's tax returns and specific dollar amounts within them. There was one where it was money went from one of Trump's holding companies to Ivanka Trump in consulting fees, which is the exact same dollar amount that she also declared as coming from something else for consulting. It lines up perfectly with a bunch of other stuff. So we have every reason to believe this is very credible reporting. New York Times doesn't just post shit without making sure that it's this is a months-long investigation.
Yeah. And I recently read Mary Trump's book just about Trump's upbringing, all that sort of stuff. And a large part of the latter third is about his finances and how and what she knows about his finances tees up really perfectly. As I was reading this New York Times report, I was like, oh yeah, this lines up with what I've heard from other sources. So it's seeming more and more credible.
And the information was basically that he'd only paid really a couple $100 worth of tax over the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, what was it, 2016 and 2017? It was $750 per year. And then in 10 out of the last 15 years, nada.
And this is the thing, is that he hasn't paid any tax because he's made business losses, which probably goes to show that
going bankrupt.
He's a terrible businessman.
Yeah, if you have to pay no tax because you lost $1 billion, that doesn't mean you're good at business. That means you're terrible at business. And I don't know.
No, George, that makes him smart.
It doesn't make him smart. It makes him
getting away with paying no taxes makes him smart, apparently.
Minimizing tax is legal. Avoiding tax is not legal. And tax avoidance is what's happening here, to be clear. It's not... I feel like we always focused on the dumbest possible common denominator with Trump. We're still arguing 4 years on whether he's a good businessman or not, when I think the only salient fact at this point is he a good leader? Will he be a good leader into the future? To which the answer is obviously quite a resounding no. So I don't really care that he's a terrible businessman. I kind of knew that already. I suppose it's good to have it in print. It also goes to show that having a businessman, whilst it sounds good, you understand how business runs, you could understand how the world runs.
He can run the country like one of his businesses, and they're so good. There's a tower with his name on it. That must mean it's good.
In that sense, he has run the country like he's run his businesses, in that he's run it into the fucking ground. So I mean, we've seen how well that's worked out. But I think the salient point about Donald Trump is does he have the ethical wherewithal to make a good leader in this situation? Does he have the skills? Does he have the temperament? Does he have the inclination? And we've had 4 years of evidence which says no. So who cares?
Before that, we had decades of evidence to say no.
Yeah. And it goes to show that you should declare your earnings up front as a presidential candidate. The American people have a right to know what financial interests a candidate has, and that should be enshrined in law, not just like as a matter of good practice or like norms, right? Trump has been really good during his tenure at completely fucking ignoring norms, but like actually have it enshrined in legislation. If you are the nominee for a major party to become president, you need to have released your tax returns, because that's what every major nominee has done since Nixon.
That's a way of saying I don't have any conflicts of interest. But the problem is with Trump is that because the Trump brand, the business is still ongoing, right? The reason why I didn't want to release them was because they show that the business is shithouse. So if they were released, there is reputational damage to the organisation, which means that it's worth nothing.
But not only that,
any potential deals that they want to, Ivanka or Trump Jr. or whoever it is,
it lays bare his naked corruption as well. The fact that he has been like that Scottish, the one of his resorts in Scotland that they just like the Air Force mysteriously stopped over at, even though it was well out of their way, like all these sorts of things. That only becomes possible. That level of graft and corruption only becomes possible when you still have, like, if you're a billionaire and you have all these different holdings and investments, it is inevitable that you will steer policy to benefit yourself. Even if you're like, oh, my kids are controlling it, you still know what the investments are. You still know how they might benefit yourself. So,
and you don't think the son or the daughter is going to turn around and go, what do you think, Dad? Like, Dad's not going to go, I can't give you advice on that, even though that after I'm president, I'm probably going to take the control back again. It
is the level of graft has been outstanding from the Trump administration, like nothing else we've ever seen in recent political memory. And there was I remember during the Carter administration, there was like a big scandal because he owned a peanut farm and he had to like sell off his holdings and basically like renounce any sort of, like this is what presidents do to avoid even just the appearance of conflict of interest. And like Trump's just like, yeah, I'm the head of a, multinational organization with holdings all across the world. Please corrupt me as fucking hard as possible. Send me as much, like hundreds of thousands of dollars that have been, sort of rinsed through his hotels by Saudi Arabia. Like there's heaps of reports about the dodgy shit that's gone on. It's just, this is what happens when the situation. Yes, that's what a conflict of interest is.
Yeah. Of course, he said it's all bullshit and it's all fake news, and of course, all the people who didn't already think that he was a corrupt, sneaky bastard still don't think he's a corrupt, sneaky bastard because they believe him. So nothing matters. Speaking of nothing mattering, the next day, so Tuesday.
That was one day.
One day of this week. Tuesday was debate day.
Oh, don't we love debate day where everyone gets in a room and has civilized discussion about the policies of the time?
The debate live.
I didn't watch it live. I watched it after the fact. My tweet storm was slightly delayed.
What about you guys? I just had it on while I was just doing some work.
How could you do work with that on?
That's the thing. I did have to like walk away from it after a bit because I was like, what the hell, and kept like chiming back to it. It was a clusterfuck, and I don't know how anyone thought it was gonna go any differently, because Trump, like, how people always have that whole thing of like, oh, you can't debate me on the substance, so you're attacking me as a person. That's Trump's MO.
Yeah.
Like, Trump will just say shit, completely untrue shit, and then it derails the conversation to you having to say, no, that's not true what he just said, rather than A, like criticizing what his beliefs are, but B, trying to get across what your beliefs are. And then that's just how it ended. And he just like ranted and interrupted Biden a zillion times.
It was a 90-minute ad hominem attack from Trump. Yeah. And what really shits me about the coverage about it and what all the media has said about it has been sparks fly, both sides engage in a down and dirty debate. And I was like, no. Biden was trying to answer the questions and like, what was going by the allotted time, and Trump slung shit for 90 minutes straight. Like, and if you as the reporter can't make the distinction between like both sides, Dem is in disarray, like, and Trump was a fucking cunt, who kept interrupting constantly for the entire duration of the debate. And the reason it was a dumpster fire is entirely due to him. Like, if you can't make that distinction, then you don't belong in journalism. I don't know what to say. This is not a thing that needs to be both sides. I was watching the ABC coverage, and as soon as it cuts away to Stan Grant and David Spears, and they're like, oh, you know, Biden called him a clown and told him to shut up. He's like, he made fun of his son's, Trump made fun of Biden's son's drug addiction. Like, okay, Biden called him a clown and lost his temper once, but like, Trump was a total cunt to him for a feature-length movie. Like, how is this they're just as bad as each other? Fuck off.
And the moderator was like,
trying
sort of to control it, and he's like, your side agreed that you would like chill the fuck out.
Yeah,
like, not even
talk to him like a child.
Work for you, set this up, and they said to, like Donald Trump hadn't even read the rule book. Do you know what I mean? Like, people have set it up for him, and he's like, oh well. I'll just
naturally, if there was a rule book, he wouldn't read it, and two, if he did read it, he wouldn't follow it.
And like, it's interesting actually that
like a child, he was like, no, Donnie, no. Put the cookie down.
And to say, and to say that it was anything but Trump being willfully like that was the strategy. Clearly, the strategy going in was disrupt, ad hominem attacks, deny, attack. And if you have the debate on those terms, Biden never gets to get any of his points out, and which is the point.
Yeah.
At the times where Biden was at his best during the debate, to me, was when he was directly addressing the camera, when he goes, you, the American people, we don't want for like 4 more years of this, 4 more years of these lies. You know, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do X, Y, Z. When he actually got to talk about his substantive policy things, about what he was going to do, that was when it was the best. And if you're directly addressing it down the camera, then like, it's much harder for Trump to interrupt, because you're almost not responding to him. You're making your own personal plea, and he'll still yell and scream to a certain degree.
He'll just go wrong occasionally, just out of nowhere, but that's fucking a nightmare.
I think,
sorry, Adam.
Well, I was just going to say, they are apparently, because there's actually an organisation, a debating organisation that sets these things up. I thought it was just one of the various news networks. But there is actually an organisation that oversees these, and
Presidential Commission for Debates or something like that.
Well, they've got to change the rules. Like, mute their mics when it's not their turn to talk. Trump will just yell louder.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, if it's a televised debate, then that allows you can control that a little bit easier, because you can just turn Trump's mic off, and if it's a direct microphone like this, you won't pick up that much stuff from the other side.
But
it would be hard. I don't see Trump even necessarily agreeing to a debate like that. Like, and from his perspective, he's just trying to be a spoiler to Biden at this point. Like, he knows
he'll just say free speech. He'll be stopping me from being able to say my free speech crime,
or he'll just refuse to participate. Like, because there's nothing in it for him if he can't be a spoiler. So also, we don't even know if the next sort of round of debates or any of that stuff is actually going to happen, because Trump was diagnosed as being positive with the coronavirus. So, and here's the interesting thing. So Hope, he presumably got it from Hope Hicks, who was an advisor in the White House. She went, I think, worked for Fox News for a little bit and then came back. So she was in close proximity with the president on Air Force One and Marine One, the chopper. Very close proximity in the days leading up to the debate. She was helping him with debate prep, I guess, to the extent that Trump preps for anything. But it is entirely possible that Trump actually knew, headed into that debate, that he was positive for the coronavirus. Because in a statement that he read later,
he'd been exposed.
Yes, it is reasonable to expect that he had been exposed at the very least. So, because he read a statement that said 72 hours, which, like, 72 hours would have put it, like, squarely before the debate. So he knew at the very least that he'd been exposed before he walked into a room with Biden. Didn't tell Biden after he got a confirmed case or the Biden camp. Trump's family, Trump's side of the debate, all of his people, the vast majority of them were not wearing masks, and they turned up to the debate late, which meant that they weren't tested before actually going into the area, which leads me to believe that they actually knew that Trump was COVID positive and sent him in there anyway because he was feeling well enough at the time.
Maybe that's
cooked.
There's a bit of.
That's cooked.
You're drawing a few lines there that haven't been confirmed.
At the very least, they had reason to suspect, and they weren't tested on the way in.
Yeah.
And you think at the very least you should test before you go into a room full of 100 people, right? Like, and he then went on to do a fundraiser thereafter when he knew he was positive, which had over 100 people in it as well. These are people that are giving you $250,000 plus. This is how he treats people that are giving him $250,000. Think how he treats people that he doesn't like.
Yeah, and heaps of people from like who were present at that event have since tested positive and stuff, like other like prominent donors or Republicans and all that sort of stuff.
Republican senators and stuff as well.
And the sushi.
Before we leave the debate too far, I feel just like there's so much from the debate to unpack that we'd be here all day. Like he ranted that cars have too many computers in them for some reason, and that was just like I remember hearing that on my live feed, and then I heard Alice in the other room go, "What?" it was hilarious. But I think the big important part that I think it would be remiss of us not to mention is when he just completely failed to denounce white supremacy.
Yeah, of course,
because of course he didn't. And there's a lot to unpack from this. But the part of it that really that I really clued into was because the moderator Chris Wallace asked him, "Will you denounce white supremacists and denounce their violence at Black Lives Matter protests and all these sorts of things?" And he deflected it a little bit to be like, "Oh, yeah, I'll do anything." Like what? I don't know why my Trump sounded like Christopher Walken for a second there. No, I'll do anything you want. I'm Christopher Walken. But no, saying I'll do anything. But and then he started saying I think it's Antifa though that does blah blah blah. But then when they said, "Will you denounce white supremacists?" He's like, yes, of course I will. And then Biden just went, do it. Do it. And Chris Wallace was like, do it. Go on. Do it, sir. And there was a pause. And you could just see in his face, it was a moment of oh shit, I thought I had more time to think of a way out of this. So then he just goes, well, what do you want to call them? What do you want me to call them?
Give me a name.
Who do I denounce? Give me a name. He's like, white supremacist. And he was just like, no, who? And that's when Biden shouted out a name of a group.
Proud Boys.
And then he, I wasn't going to say it, but whatever. But yeah, then just said and instead of denouncing them, he told them to stand back and stand by. Which, whether or not you think that's him off the cuff being a fuckwit and not actually using that as a moment to not even dog whistle to megaphone white supremacists into action. The group have latched onto it and printed T-shirts and shit with stand back and stand by on it. And they're all like, we're ready to go and hassle people at voting booths and stuff. I just never thought, I don't know why I'm still not surprised is the wrong word, just more disbelief. I just did not think I'd ever see the president, regardless of who it is. I know it's hardly surprising because of who it is. But just to be are you telling me someone asked the president, do you think white supremacists are bad and shouldn't be shooting people? and they went no, all right, hold on. No, let me think about it. You guys, I'll give you the all clear when it's okay to start racial violence again. I
think because the thing is, from his perspective, and he's probably had this from his advisors, he knows that that's his base.
Yes.
He knows that that's his base, and he can't piss them off because
the best part in a follow-up from the debate, one of CNN's apparently CNN's a Republican when you have just someone who regularly just comes on your show to give you the viewpoint, the politician who comes on and gives you a comment a lot, you have a regular informant sort of person. For CNN, it was Rick Santorum. Remember Rick Santorum? That fuckhead?
The man whose name, thanks to Dan Savage, is now synonymous with the froth that is generated from
semen-y,
byproduct of anal sex.
Yeah, after anal sex.
Yes.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Anyway, he was on CNN, and he basically said what you just said, Adam. He would because they said, why, it's awful that the president didn't denounce that. And they said, hey, and his response was something like, hey, come on, Chris and Biden knew they were asking him to do something that he didn't want to do. It's like, they're his supporters. Of course he didn't want to do that. I'm like, you're just coming out and saying
he's literally saying the quiet part out loud.
Where's the new, a spin doctor's not a thing anymore. Have they just stopped spinning anything? It's just like, so, Mr. Santorum, it seems like your party are huge fans of Nazis and the KKK and just totally committing genocide to any sort of ethnic group that are not Caucasian. How do you respond to that? Well, of course that's what we want to do. That's what we've always wanted to do. And asking us not to do it, that's in bad faith, because we don't want to do it. What?
Yeah. What? So, friend of the show, Ryan's writing in, as incredibly unlikely as it is there any credence to him lying about having COVID? It's tinfoil hat stuff for sure, but making this claim would excuse him from any further appearances and potentially push the election back, according to the theory. Now, I had this inkling as well. I have heard people espouse this idea that, potentially Trump's faking it in order to avoid having to come out and debate, considering that it's sort of a losing proposition for him at this point. What I would say is that the fact that the diagnosis was initially, I believe, reported by a woman for Bloomberg News, it's not something that they announced themselves until the reporting on this had already come out. So
the first I saw was Trump's tweet, and that was it.
Yeah, and I guess that was after the story was published, and there was no getting around it, and he just decided to announce it. The fact also that he's at Walter Reed Medical Hospital leads me to believe that he's actually probably in need of quite serious care, because from what I understand, from having listened to interviews, rather, I haven't spoken to these people myself, having listened to interviews from people
do you have contacts that I don't know about?
Having spoken to people who work in the White House, a bit of a high roller, you guys, a bit of a big player on K Street, me. Having listened to interviews with people who used to be part of Obama's establishment, for example, on Pod Save America, as well as medical people who used to work in the White House and things like that, they have quite a, short of surgery, they have the facilities on site at the White House to deal with whatever medical issues the president might be having, on purpose. That's by design.
Yeah.
So for him to be out at a hospital seeking external medical treatments suggests to me that it is pretty serious. And the video, one of which we're about to watch, one of the videos of Trump, he looks like shit. He doesn't look good. So for it to be a big, wide-ranging conspiracy, it just doesn't make it. I don't think it makes sense, purely because it doesn't advantage him really in any meaningful way.
Ryan's point that he just put in there as well is that he could then claim that the treatments that he's been spruiking work.
Except he hasn't been. This is the thing, is in none of the reporting about what he's actually been treated. There were some reports that he was being treated with a...
other people's antibodies.
Experimental antibody treatment, which hasn't been approved by the FDA.
They're just happy to use it on the president.
No mention of hydroxychloroquine, no mention of injecting bleach or any of the other nonsense that he's spruiked in the past. Has been a oddly by the book treatment of coronavirus from my understanding. So given that it doesn't necessarily give him any political advantages, and it takes away his ability to do large rallies as well, which is what he loves doing, exposing large people to the coronavirus. I don't think the theory really stands up upon further scrutiny.
Depends if he pulls through.
That I could through.
Yeah.
Oh, no, sorry, Adam. No, sorry, I talked over you.
No, that's right. I was just going to say, if he pulls through well enough, he could use it as a stake in the ground to go, coronavirus.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I think it really is a situation of he will turn around, because the death rate is lower, right? We're not talking 20, 30, 50%. It's not like, here's a man in his 70s, he's overweight, he's probably got a bunch of other comorbidities. He is more at risk than other people, but the likelihood is that he will survive. And chances are that when that happens, he will, as you say, turn around and say, see, it's not that bad, right? But I think having a situation where the president catches a disease that has killed over 200,000 people, it is a certain inflection point for the world at large to be like, this is a real thing. The president got it.
Boris Johnson got it as well, and he was also hospitalised, but he came through it. I don't think he had a particularly fun time.
It does let the air, I guess, out of the tires in terms of people, conspiracy theorists saying it's not a real thing, it doesn't exist. When the president admits that he has it and he's in hospital for it, like clearly it's a real thing.
Yeah, that's true. Although another part of it that I've often thought is because like so much about this, like just Trump's political career, if we can call it that. And all that has been about his ego in that, like, theories that he didn't even want to win the election. It was just a marketability thing. But of course, as he became more and more likely to be the winner, he's like, well, I can't just admit defeat. My ego won't take that, all that sort of stuff. Maybe he wants out and he'd make up having coronavirus to be like, I've been defeated by, like, the illness got me. Like, so he's not saying like, I quit, I run away. He's like forcing his hand to no longer debate, to maybe not be able to be on the ticket, to get out of the job.
No, he wants it.
I think he's actually got it. I don't think he hasn't got it.
Yeah, that's me. That's me. I firmly believe that, he's got it and all that sort of stuff. But that's just one reason I could think that he might fake it. But I doubt it.
There certainly have been instances of political leaders in the past using medical stuff to get out of hard areas. Anthony Eden was an example from the UK, which has been featured quite prominently in The Crown. I have to step back and go and, recoup in Jamaica or whatever the fuck he went, without actually having to deal with the hard issues at the time.
I think more often than not, though, when it comes to the presidency, you want to, if anything, underplay how sick the president is to maintain the illusion of control. And certainly, there are procedures in place if Trump falls too ill or anything like that. Obviously, it would go to Vice President Pence, and then beyond that, Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House. But what is concerning is a lot of these members of Congress and things like that, the top five are the former Secretary of Homeland Security was on Rachel Maddow the other night, and he was saying the top 5 people in line of succession should be like quarantined, basically, to preserve, the line of power, line of succession, should anything happen. And they're not being. There currently aren't these procedures around.
With designated survivor and,
right, or Battlestar Galactica, where the Minister for Education becomes the president. It is a dicey situation, and the fact that the centers of power have been so lax about really properly dealing with this and having appropriate controls is very concerning. Back to just the actual, beyond
the political ramifications.
Beyond the political ramifications, what I think is slightly concerning about this whole situation is that I do see some people on the sort of left and far left being like, yeah, fuck Trump, I hope he dies, he's a piece of shit, yes, he's got the corona, fuck yeah. And I really want to discourage that kind of rhetoric. Don't get me wrong, there was a bit of a flutter when I saw, that he had coronavirus. You've literally
said on this podcast several times.
I hope that he dies, yes. I understand that. But it's one thing saying it as a joke or as a rhetorical advice to express how much displeasure I have for the president. It's another thing actually hoping a human being dies. And I don't, as horrible and as reprehensible as much of a piece of shit as I think he is, I think it is the best thing for the country and for the world that we don't wish harm on our political enemies. I think he's wrong on everything. I hate him. I hate him as a person. I think he's a bad person. I honestly don't hope that he dies, because I think that would cause an even more turbulent political situation, and I don't think it's a good precedent to set. Do you guys have thoughts on that?
You're not gonna like me, George. I think the political ramifications, of what kind of fucking snowball effect that can set off with Pence being the nominee and all that sort of stuff that. That's a kettle of fish that it's it'll probably start some kind of crazy clusterfuck if he dies. That'll be horrific. But on the other hand, I wouldn't see. I hope he dies. I really hope he dies, because it's just a thing. If I don't see it as
the views are his own and do not reflect the wider.
I don't see it as a just wishing. It's not a wishing death on our political enemies precedent for me. I saw someone phrase this in a really great way. Dave Anthony from The Dollop. He's been on fire on Twitter for the last few days after this. Has been like to sending him well wishes and hope, and like, you know, all these people who are kind of like, even though they are his political enemies, like either like Democrat politicians or like more left-leaning journalists and stuff, so saying we wish like the president well and all that sort of stuff, normalizes well-wishing a fascist. And fuck him. Like, it's the same as we had this discussion a couple of years ago when Egg Boy egged Fraser Anning.
Hang on, I don't want to say I wish him well, and I'm praying for him, and he's in my thoughts and prayers. Like, the Biden campaign actually stopped negative campaign ads against Trump, which actually I think puts them at a structural disadvantage. I don't want to do that. Meanwhile,
they're not going to play fair.
No. So, but I would stop short of wishing him dead. Like,
all you have to say is say nothing.
Yes.
Fuck him, die. I hope he dies.
Tom's user his own. I hope he dies. Tom is the nicest guy I know, and this is so out of character.
That's the thing. Okay, so I've talked about this occasionally on the show before, as to like I can't like define it for you, but I have a line. There's a line where a person can cross it, and I feel like no, you are no longer worthy of even the utmost respect. And people like Trump, Fraser Anning, like those kind of like Nazi is well over the line. Fascist Nazi fuckheads are well over the line. Ooh. Maybe Peter Dutton had crossed that line for me. Chris Pine wouldn't, though, for example.
It's
Tony Abbott doesn't.
It's
no, he hasn't crossed the line. He's too dumb.
What about George Christensen?
Oh, I'd have to think about that one.
Or
George Christensen is a complicated character.
What about the guy with the big hat?
Let's be clear about that.
Oh, Bob Catter.
Bob Catter
is not complicated. Bob Catter is just straight up.
No, yeah. He's not... It's evil that needs to be in there. It's not just fuckheadery, it's evil. Like, there has to be like that sense of evil in there.
Friend of the show, Ryan is writing in again. Appreciate you staying with us, Ryan. Good commitment. I like it. The concern would be the martyrdom that would come along with his death. Praising the death of a politician was seen when Thatcher died. Could be the same ?
Well, it's not like he's. I guess it's different because martyrdom would, I'd say. Well, yeah, and I'd say martyrdom would definitely be a thing. Like, you know, if someone killed him, like if someone shot him like Kennedy, like.
However, and there's something to be said for like, I saw a tweet which was like, I understand that he's a guy in his 70s and he could die of just about anything, but from a script writing structural perspective, it has to be coronavirus. Like that is the thing, which would be like thematically the most, like if it was a film, that would be the thing, the exact thing over which you had so much hubris happens to be the exact thing that kills you. There's a Shakespearean quality to that.
100%.
So yeah, I guess there
might
be
depends how they spin it. Really, at the end of the day, whether he survives or dies, it's really, we're talking about spin doctors not being relevant before, but they are, and they will come into play.
Yes,
in the next chapter of this saga.
Yeah, I'd imagine martyrdom would maybe come into it if, like, for example, then if still the Republicans won and held power, probably it would come into it the people who were very much about placing coronavirus in general at China's feet become like, you know, then all that rhetoric around where did this come from and how did China fuck it up so bad and it's the China virus and all that sort of stuff would be like, and that China virus killed the president.
Yeah.
And off they go. Like that'd be how some martyrdom would be. Ryan, you're not getting too involved, mate.
Not at all, mate.
No, it's great. This is great.
This is exactly. I love this. Like, because I love knowing what people are thinking and saying and responding to our stuff. Don't ever apologize. I would like to think through, like, say he does die, just a sort of a bit thought experiment. I think, and I'd be curious to know what you guys think about this as well. I think it would only be bad for the Republicans because I don't think the Republican Party in its current incarnation is Trump. So if Trump is gone, I very much doubt that you would have the kind of political fervor and sort of animus that energizes his base and would turn them out to the polls. I think in the absence of Trump, I think they just don't come up. Pence doesn't get them excited though. Pence is not a race baiting, loud, aggro. Like Pence just wouldn't get these same guys excited.
No, but he could control the middle ground.
Yeah,
Trump doesn't control the middle ground.
When you say that Trump is the Republican Party, the Republican Party is Trump.
At this point,
I feel well. At this point, I feel it's sort of the other way around, though. It's that that this is what the Republican Party's like, and they've found a guy who can sell it, right? So they found a guy who could rile up the base.
Yeah.
Like he could find who could rile up the base. So I think you're right in that sense of Pence wouldn't inspire the same base in the same way that Trump does. But I also don't feel like if Trump
isn't going to turn as many people off. Is an unknown.
I don't think if Trump dies, then the Republican Party won't be as craven, lying, like all the stuff they've been doing. They've just been doing it in the open now because Trump is such a dumpster fire of controversy that they can get away with it.
Because it's really about who do you hate more at the end of the day. And
who's your return sandwich?
There are a lot of people that just hate Trump, and so they're going to vote for Biden. Republican voters, like traditional Republican voters, who are going, I hate this guy. He's crazy. Let's vote for Trump. You put Pence back in the picture as hypothetically, if this all happens, then all of a sudden those people that were turned off, I go, actually, no, Pence is reasonable. He's a Christian loving. He loves NASA. I love NASA. Let's vote for Pence.
Yeah, there would be those people who are I'm voting for the guy who's not Trump, rather than.
I think you'll find that it won't.
The rhetoric needs to be anti-Republican Party, not anti-Trump.
And it actually does it does give the never Trumpers, the traditional sort of Lincoln Project Republicans, a bit of cover to then go back and vote with the Republican Party because now it's more traditional. You don't have Andrew Sullivan, the only conscientious conservatives that I'm aware of, actually then going, okay, well then actually, how I said vote for Biden? Don't vote for Biden, vote for Pence. You might have a bit of that.
Okay. A lot of this depends on exactly if and when it would
and
happen.
How. Yeah.
Anyway,
can we have him get a bit better? The election rolls round. Biden wins in a landslide. Complications following recovery of coronavirus kills him. Home run.
I feel like you're really stuck on this point, Tom. You're really trying to make it happen.
Oh, wait, if Biden's president, that's okay.
That's what I mean. So that's the thing. The Democrats win. So we have the election. So Trump's the nominee. So everyone overwhelmingly votes for Biden because we're all never Trumpers. So Biden wins. They're going to be inaugurated, all that sort of stuff. But then, because as people say, oh, it just takes 2 weeks and then you get over the coronavirus. It's no, people have had chronic respiratory issues for months following, even if they're no longer contagious anymore. And he's an old man, and then bam, dead.
So we were going to talk about wage theft and microwaves in Australia, but I don't know if we've got enough time.
Currently running at 1 hour and 8, so we probably don't have the time to do that.
On that.
I called for the death of Trump for a little second.
We'll come back to it next week.
Too much murdering of the president for one rundown.
We really should not be talking about this. This is just the kind of thing that people can.
It's a natural causes, Adam. It's out of our hands.
I don't want to say anything otherwise about it. It is what it is. If he's got it, then
whilst I'm not going to be, as an atheist, I'm not going to be praying for his speedy recovery. I don't wish for his death. Let's leave it at that. In terms of, I don't know, in terms of how you guys see, does it change? Does it really change anything? I guess is the question.
If it gives Biden the oxygen for 3 weeks, it could very well turn the election.
Yep.
It really just depends on what happens and how sick he gets and how quick he recovers, and also how good the Republican spin doctors are in maybe using this as either a launching pad or a defense mechanism. There's so many ways it could go.
Yeah,
but I think at the very least it does give Biden the oxygen for a number of weeks, which. Who knows? Democrats have managed to drop the ball in the past. Maybe they will pick it up this time and run with the flag.
They've got a month to go.
Something I am looking for. Well, I was looking forward to was the town hall debates. I felt like Joe Biden, as I mentioned, was when he was at his best when he was talking down the camera. Those town hall debates are where people come and ask questions and the candidate answers them directly. I was keen to see something like that happen, and I'm sad to see that it's not, because I feel like Biden really would have excelled in that arena.
This
is something
Biden could still do his own town halls. To be
True.
fair,
it's kind of meaningless without the other candidate there. I'm sure he's been doing that all along.
It's seen as unsportsmanly, probably, if the other guy's not there to rebut him.
And the Democrats have this pesky impulse to play by the rules all the time. It does.
Why not get Pence? If you're a Republican, why not get Pence on the front foot?
Well, this is the other thing: is there is a vice presidential debate coming forward, and I've never said this before. I'm actually looking forward to the vice presidential debate because it's Kamala Harris versus Pence, so that should be quite interesting, and that's still going ahead. So, in terms of what it means for the race, it's sort of it's a bit of a crapshoot. You don't really know how it's going to go, but. Certainly, if things continue on their current trajectory, they look good. Biden has, according to the polls, and I know we've said polls, don't trust the polls, but as commanding of a lead as a president has had in modern electoral history. Given how polarized things are and have been for the last 30 years, it is the most commanding lead that any presidential candidate has come into an election with. So... I'm feeling good. I'm feeling confident about his ability to, not destroy the world. So
I just think
fingers
if
crossed.
we've learned anything from the Comey and the emails scenario, anything can happen at the last minute, which will change things.
Could there be another October surprise? October surprise.
If this isn't the only October surprise, holy shit. I don't know how much more of this year I can take.
This is I feel like we've binged watched 3 seasons of America in the last week.
Yeah.
It's been fucking crazy this week.
My joke, you bastard. I said that before the show.
I'm taking it. It's mine now. Fuck you. On that note, we have been, we are, and we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Make sure you follow us on all social medias that have, do, or ever will exist at Unnatural Show. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at George Tsipos.
You can follow me on Twitter at Tom D. Heath.
You can follow me and my wonderful beard at Instagram at AC Doreen.
And you can follow us all down to Walter Reed Medical Center, where we send the president our best thoughts and prayers. Tom, you can't speak. I'm muting you. Thanks for listening, guys. Love your faces. We'll see you next week.
Be Trump. Be.